Paul is dead. In the 1960s, the Beatles was the biggest name on the planet. People fainted at their concerts, bought their records by the millions, and followed their every move. But then, somewhere around 1969, a wild rumor started to spread. Paul McCartney was dead. Not just dead, he had been dead since 1966 and replaced with a look-alike by the British government and the rest of the Beatles to avoid the public freaking out. The story goes that Paul supposedly died in a car crash after storming out of a recording session in frustration. According to the legend, the surviving Beatles, devastated but terrified of the public reaction, agreed to cover it up. They found a guy named William Campbell, a Paul look-alike and winner of a McCartney look-alike contest, and gave him plastic surgery to match Paul's appearance. William then stepped into Paul's shoes and carried on like nothing ever happened. Now here's where it gets crazy. Fans across the world began to spot certain clues. On the front cover of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, the Beatles are standing over what looks like a grave, with a hand raised over Paul's head, a supposed symbol of death. Then on the back cover, Paul is facing away from the camera, while the others face forward. Even more disturbing is the Abbey Road cover, which people called a funeral procession. John in white as a preacher, Ringo in black as a mourner, George in denim as a gravedigger, and Paul? He's barefoot and out of step with the others, supposedly the corpse. He's also holding a cigarette in his right hand, even though Paul was famously left-handed. But the thing is, Paul McCartney was very much alive, and he thought the whole thing was hilarious. In fact, in interviews, he shrugged it off with that classic British sarcasm, once joking, "If I were dead, I'd be the last to know." Marilyn Manson's ribs. If you were in high school in the late 90s or early 2000s, chances are you heard someone talk about this behind the bleachers or blurted out in the locker room. The rumor was that Marilyn Manson had surgically removed one or more of his ribs so he could perform a certain sexual act on himself. It was so outrageous, so bizarre, that it sounded like it had to be true, but it was complete fiction. Sadly, that didn't stop it from spreading like wildfire. Manson, with his usual strange makeup, shock rock persona, and love of pushing social boundaries, seemed like the perfect guy to be at the center of something so disturbing. Parents hated him, teenagers worshipped him, and the media painted him as the devil in leather pants. So when a rumor like this surfaced, people didn't even blink. It made the rounds without any evidence, even making headlines. The story got so serious that Manson himself had to address it. In multiple interviews over the years, he laughed it off, saying it was completely false and just one of many absurd rumors people loved to believe about him. Little did he know that the rib rumor was just the tip of the iceberg. Soon after the rib rumor started to circulate, people claimed he played the nerdy kid Paul on the Wonder Years, also false, or that he worshipped Satan in real life, which is not quite. The rib one stuck around longer than the others because it was grotesque, mysterious, and fed into the idea that Manson was less of a person and more of a monster. Love Roller Coaster Scream. In 1975, the Ohio Players dropped their funky hit, Love Roller Coaster. It was a disco funk anthem, all rhythm and fire, but in the middle of the song, something weird happens. Just as the band is jamming and the groove is peaking, there's a sudden, blood-curdling scream in the background. That one moment turned into one of the most terrifying urban legends in music history. According to the rumor, that scream wasn't part of the song. It was the actual sound of a woman getting her life taken during the recording. The story took on a life of its own. Some said it was the model on the album cover, who had gotten into a fight with the band or the photographer. Others claimed she was stabbed or beaten just outside the recording booth, and her death was accidentally, or maybe intentionally, captured on the final track. The band denied it, of course. They said the scream came from keyboardist Billy Beck, who just wanted to add a little chaotic energy to the track, but the more they denied it, the more people believed the rumor. The album's cover also didn't help. The model on it was unclad and covered in honey, giving the track a strange, sensual, and unsettling vibe. Later, some pointed out that the model, Esther Corday, was alive and well, which should have ended the rumor, but it didn't. The scream was just too intense to let slide. People didn't want to believe it was just a sound effect. They wanted a dark mystery. That's why, even today, whenever Love Roller Coaster plays and that scream hits, the rumor resurfaces. Robert Johnson's Deal with the Devil. In the early 1930s, in the Deep South, a young, unknown blues guitarist named Robert Johnson wandered from town to town, trying to get gigs, but he wasn't that good. Locals even recall him being downright terrible, from being awkward on stage and out of rhythm to people literally running him off the floor. Then, suddenly, he disappeared. For a while, no one saw or heard anything from him. Then when he returned, it was like he was reborn. He was suddenly playing with strange confidence, tuning notes in ways no one had heard before, and his voice was raw with emotion. as he sang. He basically went from mediocre to legendary overnight. That's when the legend began. People started saying he had done the unthinkable. He made a deal with the devil. According to the legend, Robert went to a crossroads at midnight, guitar in hand. There, the devil appeared to him. In exchange for his soul, the devil gave Robert the power to play like no other man alive. The legend only got more famous as people listened to the songs. Tracks like Me and the Devil Blues, Crossroad Blues, and Hellhound on My Trail weren't exactly subtle. He sang about running from hellhounds, meeting the devil, and trying to find redemption, all in that weird, ghostly voice. People were convinced these were confessions of what he'd done. Add to that his mysterious death at age 27, under shady circumstances. Many believe it was the devil finally getting his end of the deal. Robert was buried in an unmarked grave, and only a handful of blurry photos of him exist. To this day, Robert Johnson is considered the father of the blues, and the myth of the Crossroads deal is one of the most powerful legends in music history. Keith Richards snorting his dad's ashes. For decades, the Rolling Stones' legendary guitarist has been the poster child for rock and roll excess, but in 2007, he allegedly crossed into pure myth when he casually told a journalist that he had snorted his father's ashes. In the interview with NME, Richards said he mixed his late father's cremated remains with a line of cocaine and did the whole thing in one go. He even called it the strangest thing he'd ever done, which is saying a lot coming from someone who's reportedly tried almost every drug in existence. Fans were horrified, and the internet was flooded with posts about it. Others were morbidly fascinated, while the rest simply felt that sounded like something Keith would do. After all, this is the same man who once fell out of a tree, got a full blood transfusion to quit heroin, allegedly, and somehow lived through the most destructive decades of rock music without missing a beat. But here's where things get quite strange. After the story went viral, Richards tried to walk it back. He later claimed it was just a joke, that it had been taken out of context, and that he never actually did it. But the damage, or the legend, was already done. By then, it didn't matter whether it was true or not. The image of Keith Richards snorting his dad's ashes had already become iconic, and it stuck because it felt true. Keith had survived so many overdoses, arrests, and headline scandals that people believed he could do literally anything and still walk out unscathed with a guitar in hand. Whether he was trolling the media or just being honest in a moment of twisted grief, the story became a permanent part of rock folklore. Phil Collins and the drowning rumor. For years, people swore that Phil Collins watched a man drown and later wrote a song to expose him. This urban legend centers around his 1981 hit In the Air Tonight, which already has an unsettling vibe, with those strange lyrics and that thunderous drum break. According to the story, Collins witnessed a man watching another man drown without helping. Some say Phil was too far to save the drowning person himself, so he tracked down the bystander and invited him to a solo concert, where he spotlighted him in the audience while singing the song as a form of public shaming. In the version told at school lunch tables and locker rooms, the bystander was so guilt-ridden that he either broke down sobbing, confessed to the police, or even killed himself after the show. Some versions got even wilder, claiming Phil hired a private investigator or kept the identity a secret until that concert moment, but it's all false. Phil Collins himself has debunked it many times. According to him, In the Air Tonight was inspired by the pain and bitterness of his divorce, not a drowning incident. There was no mystery man, no concert takedown, and definitely no criminal confession. Unfortunately, the myth had the drama people love: a tragic death, a guilty villain, and an artist using his platform for revenge. It was cinematic and felt very possible because the song itself is so intense. Even Eminem referenced the rumor in his song Stan, which only gave it more life. In reality, Collins was just writing from a place of heartbreak, but the strange tone of the song invited people to project their own twisted stories onto it. The 27 Club. There's a reason why the number 27 is unique in the music industry. According to one of the most historical urban legends in rock culture, it's not just any number, it's a curse. No one knows when it started, but fans started to notice a pattern in the death of some of the industry's biggest names. They died at the age of 27. This group was then named the 27 Club, and it has existed ever since. From legends like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Kurt Cobain to Amy Winehouse, they were all gone too soon, all at the peak of their fame, and all 27. The legend says that some dark force, including fame, drugs, pressure, or even something supernatural, claims artists at this exact age, like it's some kind of musical Bermuda Triangle. When a talented artist dies at the age of 27, fans and conspiracy theorists connecting dots that may or may not exist, pointing out strange patterns in how they died, be it overdose, suicide, or any mysterious circumstance. What really spooked people the most was that these weren't minor acts. These were game changers, icons, and artists who seemed untouchable. The myth took hold and never let go. Some say it's about the price of fame, that artists burn too brightly and too fast, and 27 is when the candle finally goes out. Others claim there's something demonic about it, that in exchange for talent or influence, these artists made some kind of unspoken deal they couldn't escape. To back the legend up, people point to lyrics and interviews where these artists talked about death, demons, or not making it past a certain age. Kurt Cobain's suicide note quoted Neil Young, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." Amy Winehouse once said she was scared of dying young. Then she did, at 27. Backmasking. In the 70s and 80s, people had the idea that musicians, especially rock bands, were hiding subliminal messages in their songs, only audible when you play the record backward. Bands like Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, and even Queen were accused of sneaking in satanic or sinister phrases hidden behind their music. The most famous of all was Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. When reversed, some claim to hear phrases like, "Here's to my sweet Satan," or "There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer." Whether it was pure coincidence or just a suggestive legend, once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. It freaked people out so much that churches held seminars on it, and some schools even banned certain albums. The legend didn't stop there. The Beatles were said to have put secret clues about Paul McCartney's death in their backwards recordings, feeding the Paul is dead theory. Judas Priest was even taken to court in 1990 because of supposed backmasked messages that allegedly drove two fans to attempt suicide. They won the case, but the damage to their reputation was already done. Then there was Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. Some swore that playing it backward revealed it's fun to smoke marijuana. Whether the artist did it intentionally, subconsciously, or not at all, backmasking started an era of paranoia during a time when rock music was already under fire from religious groups and parents. Most of it was just coincidence, our brains trying to find patterns in gibberish, but that didn't stop fans from spinning records backwards late at night, hoping to find some hidden truth. Deborah Harry's brush with Bundy. Deborah Harry, the iconic frontwoman of Blondie, revealed an experience that sounded like it was out of a horror movie. According to her, sometime in the early 1970s, before she became famous, she was walking alone in New York City late at night, trying to hail a cab. A car pulled up, and the driver offered her a ride. She hesitated, but the streets were empty, so she got in. Immediately, something felt wrong. The door had no handles on the inside, the windows were sealed tight, and there was a guy-wrenching silence. She claimed the man gave off a creepy energy, and her gut told her to get out of there. So when the car slowed at a red light, she flung the door open from the outside and escaped. Later, when Ted Bundy's crimes were all over the news, Deborah said she recognized the face. It was him. She was convinced that the man who picked her up that night was Ted Bundy, one of America's most notorious serial killers. Now, here's where the legend takes a strange twist. Critics and true crime enthusiasts have questioned the timeline. Bundy was primarily active in the Pacific Northwest and Florida, not New York. There's no official record of him being in NYC during the early 70s, and certainly not operating his typical abduction method there. But facts aside, Deborah Harry never backed down from the story. Whether it really was Bundy or just a random creep with the same unsettling vibe, the experience haunted her, and that's why this legend has endured for so long. It plays on the lingering what if thought, because what if one small decision, like listening to your instincts, ends up saving your life? Tupac is alive. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was shot multiple times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He died 6 days later, officially. But within weeks, one rumor surfaced. Tupac is alive. People pointed to how quickly he was cremated, the closed casket funeral, the lack of clear photos from the hospital, and how no one ever really saw his body. Then the music kept coming, album after album, each one packed with lyrics that sounded too aware and strangely prophetic. One posthumous album was even titled The Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory, with Tupac using the alias Machiavelli, a reference to Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance thinker who once wrote about faking one's death to fool enemies. To fans, that wasn't coincidence, it was Tupac's message. Over the years, the sightings have been endless. Tupac was seen in Cuba, Malaysia, Africa, even hanging out in LA in a hoodie. Grainy photos, blurry videos, and cryptic messages from former collaborators like Suge Knight only added to the legend. Some believe he went into hiding to escape enemies, while others think there's more to it. He was escaping the evils of the music industry. There's even a theory that his lyrics contain clues to his resurrection, with fans clinging to every verse. Of course, the official story is that Tupac died from his injuries in the hospital, but that hasn't stopped the belief. More than 2 decades later, people still believe he's out there, living in peace, waiting to return, or simply watching the world he once rapped about. Thank you for watching this video. Let us know which legend shocked you the most in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and share it with anyone you know who would love to see it. If you'd like to see more content like this, then subscribe to our channel and click the notification icon so you don't miss our next updates.